While tens of thousands of Tibetans in 1959 had crossed the Himalayas into freedom in India, Bhutan, Nepal, and Sikkim, a few thousand refugees had settled just across the lines of the Indian border. As they regarded their stay temporary, with the hope that the Chinese would eventually be driven out, the refugees did not migrate further into India. As war broke out between India and China in 1962, these Tibetans again had to flee a second time further south into India for sanctuary. Here, they are seen arriving at the Ladakh Buddh Vihar transit camp in New Delhi, provided by Prime Minister Nehru for their temporary shelter and relief. Later, in 1964, these very Tibetans were moved to the present Tibetan camp of Majnu Ka Tilla in New Delhi. These were very challenging times for the Tibetan people that had left their land and come penniless to seek freedom from a communist occupation that began in 1950. Over 1 million Tibetans had been killed, while the practice of their religion and culture been desecrated. The fear of communism and of the thought of getting apprehended by the PLA soldiers was so great that people virtually fled, packing overnight. Here on the grounds of the Ladakh Buddh Vihar, a mother and son portray a stoic moment of resilience, struggling to survive amid all the great odds. Encouragement and hope from their leaders to begin a new direction was crucial for the Tibetan refugees. Although the Tibetans placed great hope in a quick return to a free Tibet, their immediate relief in sustenance and exile became most urgent. As thousands had come out with no knowledge whatsoever of the ways of the world, they pinned much hope in the Dalai Lama and on the United Nations of the world to resolve the Tibet crisis. Much suffering and hardship was sacrificed in the hope to regain Tibetan independence and a return back to a free Tibet. Many traumatized, underfed, and emotionally beaten looked for counsel and direction. They pinned their hope in a world that would bring justice to their cause, sadly only to realize a world so indifferent to their appeals. But hope do they carry on as they pass on the torch of freedom to the present generation, who have demonstrated that the fight for justice and freedom will never cease until Tibet becomes free again. The year has just turned 1963, and the Tibetans who have sought refuge at the Ladakh Buddh Vihar temple are celebrating the new Tibetan year. Many of the Tibetans were from the Tsari region of southern Tibet, while others hailed from the border regions of Kham and Amdo in eastern Tibet. They were all displaced a second time in October 1962 as war broke out between China and India. They had settled in the border areas of Northeastern Frontier Agency in the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. Here at the Ladakh Buddh Vihar, next to an Indian official, is Mr. Ngawang Chösang, a former monk who was an interpreter at the Tibet Bureau in New Delhi. His work involved visiting the numerous scattered refugee camps and getting recordings and communicating messages. Indian leaders and foreign dignitaries and their wives frequently came to contribute their support to the Tibetans during this period. The man sitting on the ground, eating rice and lentil soup in the hot climate of India, finds food so strange to his diet. The traditional Tibetan diet largely consists of yak meat and mutton, barley and buttered tea. The sweltering hot Indian climate became disastrous to many Tibetan refugees. The lack of proper health care, poor living conditions, and sense of hygiene, which wasn't an issue in the cold temperatures of Tibet, suddenly proved deadly in the unusually hot Indian lowlands. Here, a family, despite the great odds of life, merrily make Tibetan butter tea in the traditional way. These brave children Many who became orphaned during the journey of escape to freedom survived to tell a story of despair and hope. Others, whose parents languished in road camps building roads for the Indian government. Countless accounts are told of people rescuing children from the arms of dying parents along the deadly trek across the Himalayas. It was these Tibetan children whom the Dalai Lama worried the most for their immediate welfare.